At a place called Nilki on the Tian Shan Mountains, we met a party of Kazakh women on horseback. Then we saw another group coming from a different direction. As we watched, we saw the women of the second party receive a pink scarf from the first party. They used it to veil the head of a young girl. Our Chinese cameraman told us it was a wedding. The bride-to-be dismounted about 500 meters from the groom's tent. To welcome the bridal party, they scatter cakes made from cheese and dried horse meat. But the young bride keeps her veil on and doesn't show her face to the wedding guests. When she enters the tent, she is faced by an old man who asks her ritual questions. Will you look after your father and mother? Will you be obedient to your husband? Will you take good care of his horses? She answers by bowing her head. The old man chants words that mean that the marriage is now complete. And at last, the bride takes off her veil. But where's the groom? In the West, bride and groom always sit next to one another. But here, the bridegroom sits in a lower place, far away from his bride. When we looked closely at the bride, whose name was Dilipa, we remembered that we'd seen her before, a year ago. The previous June, when we came to Nilki before, we saw this girl playing a courtship game called the Gunyang Chase. After a year's courtship, the two young people have now succeeded in marrying. prosperity to the land. We filmed a wedding ceremony that took place at Wachu, about 80 kilometers or 50 miles from Tashkogan. The groom is the young man with the red and white silk bands on his hat. The red symbolizes butter and the white, milk, two colors that are used here for celebrations. The groom visits the house of his bride-to-be on the third day of the festivities. He's only 20 years old. The groom is greeted by a group of women who offer him a cup of ewe's milk with salt in it and sprinkle him with flour. This is to symbolize plenty. They offer the same to the groom's attendants, but the groom only dismounts from his horse when he is invited to do so by the father of the bride. And he's given permission to enter the house only when his father-in-law-to-be has inspected the presents he's brought. The house is built of sun-dried brick, and it's sunk a little way into the ground. The bride, who's 19 years old, wears the same red and white festival colors as her groom. The village elder talks to the groom's attendants, asking them what the young man has come for and whether he will make his wife happy. The bride and groom never utter a word to each other. The elder reads from the Quran and blesses the happy couple. Then they fill a cup with ewe's milk. The attendant serves the groom with his right hand and the bride with his left. من رفته بودم برای این اوبکا هم سنت مصطفی هم فرض اله بر آدم بر نو خلیل است این فرض از بر نکاح آورید مشما اینو یک سایدم The young couple have known each other since they were children. In the old days, people used to get married when they were 15 or 16. But nowadays they tend to marry at about 20. However, they still marry for love, which is just as it's always been. Outside, they're already dancing to celebrate the wedding. The whole village has been invited. This was the first place we'd seen in China where people kiss in public. The young couple will begin their married life in a room in the groom's family house. There are about 20,000 Tajiks in the Tashkurgan Autonomous Region. But the tribesmen also live across the border in the Soviet Union, in Afghanistan, and in Iran. In mid-July, we were lucky enough to be able to watch a Uyghur wedding. The bride arrives in a truck, and with her entourage and a band, goes in a procession to the groom's house. Behind the band come two pairs of attendants, the bride's parents, and all her relatives and friends in order. The bride is completely invisible behind a thick veil, and she is carried on a rich carpet. In front of the groom's house, she is carried across a fire to show how she'll face the problems of married life. As soon as she reaches her husband's house, the new bride bursts into tears. She's only 18 years old, and her name is Marigre Abora. Now the veil has been taken off to show that she's the wife in this house, and that this is her room. Now she will always stay with her husband and never leave him. The musician sings a wedding song, and the cousin of the bride dances. While the bride's relations are dancing, the musicians sing, and in the garden, the celebrations of the groom's party are reaching a high point. The groom is 23 years old. His name is Baikri Sleek, and he has been courting Marigre for a whole year. The go-between proposes a toast to the happy pair in a merry song, which is said to dispel all care. Singing and dancing seem almost necessary to the lives of the people of Kucha.